We're going to be listening to and discussing training the machine, licensing music for AI. This next conversation brings us right into one of the hottest questions in the AI music space, all about licensing. We're going to be looking at how AI models rely on vast amounts of data to learn and create, and how that doesn't just raise legal and ethical questions, but also opens up new revenue streams. And I'm so excited to have a full panel here that's going to be discussing this. And I'd love to introduce you to somebody who has been right at the forefront of music and law, bridging industry innovation with legal expertise. Please help me in welcoming the moderator of this panel, Amma Walton from SoundCloud.
Thank you.
I'll hand it off to you, Amma, to introduce yourself and everyone else. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yolanda. So, my name is... Now we have an intro. Shall we wait until the music is over, or shall I rap a bit? Not that I have a talent for that. My talents are elsewhere. So, my name is Amma Walton. I am Executive Vice President and the General Counsel at SoundCloud. As you know, or most of you know, SoundCloud is a music company which has been founded here in Berlin 17 years ago already. And it's a place where artists and fans can connect. We have a streaming service, but we also have a creator business and the music discovery company, music company in the world, I would say, where you can really find new music and can experiment with music, which will bring us to the topic of AI and licensing later. I have a few merch stuff for you if anybody is interested after the panel. Michal has some goodies, so if you're interested, and for the panelists, of course, too. I have a few goodie bags. So we have a great group of panelists here, and before I will hand over to each of them to introduce themselves, I also wanted to say a few words where I stand on the topic of AI, as I have experienced in my entire professional life in the music industry, the invention of MP3, copyright, copying CDs in masses, file sharing, which led really to halving the revenues of the industry. We have managed through all these technological developments and have seen the music industry in the gutter during that time. We then we had, of course, the invention of downloads and the iTunes Store, and then we came up with streaming, music streaming, which revolutionized the way of consuming music again. And now I think this is the most drastic technological evolution I at least have experienced, and that's generative AI. I'm at SoundCloud now for 4.5 years as the General Counsel, dealing with all of these questions and topics and finding rules and licensing concept with copyright, with rights holders, but also approaching innovation. So dealing with AI is a balance between innovation and protecting copyrights. So we approach AI with caution and curiosity. So that's the guiding principle. And for me, being someone who loves and deeply respects the creative community, it is really a goal and a rule to protect human creativity. So this is how we, and I personally approach this and how I lead within my role. I will hand over now to this great group of panelists who will cut through this hot and complex topic through the various corners of business, music, law, community. So this will be more an educational conversation on the topic, because AI licensing is about to emerge. We have in other content areas already kind of established rules and systems. For music, it's still an evolving topic, so there are no standard digital licenses already in place, like we see this for other areas of the licensing world of music. And I will begin now to hand it over to Loredana to introduce herself, and then you can hand it off to the other panelists. And please also share a few words on where you stand at the intersection of the music law community and business side of things.
Hi, I'm Loredana Cacciotti. I am the founder of Future Play Music, which is a consultancy where I advise distributors, but also startup companies with their licensing needs. I am a music lawyer by trade. That's what I've been doing for the majority of my career, from Ministry of Sound to BPI. And then I spent a chunk at Fuga, later downtown. And towards the end of my career, there is where I did the switch of what I've been doing now, which is working more on the commercial licensing side, advising on strategies as well, or what my clients should be doing. So I don't advise them just on the legalities. It's a mix and match type of situation. And clearly, some of my clients are coming across obviously AI, whether they need to decide whether they want to license their catalog for AI, while some other are actually more actively invested. I think about Lander. I lead their licensing department, but they are incredibly active in the AI space. And so on kind of on a daily basis, I am coming across different type of opportunities that we need to assess, both from a commercial viability, but also then most of the time I need also to review the agreements. And
Thank you, Loredana.
Passing it on to Ralph.
To Ralph, maybe.
Danke. Hello, yeah, my name is Ralph Böge. I'm the CEO of the distribution company called Paradise, and Paradise was and still is something like an incubator and an advisor and a knowledge transfer company for the new entity called Exchange. I call it incubator because Paradise is licensing, administrating, or owning all rights on most of the content which is under the distribution or monetization. And that is and was the foundation for the AI exchange, because when you can't handle or you don't know about both music rights, the master and the publishing, composition and recording, then you should not go into the AI game or licensing or exploitation world. We have developed these AI principles together with within the frame of the AFEM. Kurosh is AFEM. We can talk about it afterwards more. AI principles are a guideline. I call it an extension of the AI Act. I'm not sure if everybody is aware of the European AI Act, but AI Act was a frame and an idea from the European Commission for different AI genres for the complete industry. But I think the unofficial message is also make something out of the AI Act and develop and include it. Take care of copyright, but also be progressive if it's about new development. And to sum it up, I think I'm in the middle of the old music industry and the new Gen AI world. So I'm trying to think old and new and trying to combine this new ecosystem, which is developing at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph. Let's hand it over to Sophie and then to Kurosh, because Kurosh also wants to share some slides. So let's give it up to Sophie.
Thank you so much. I'm very intimidated by all of you people. But yeah, so I'm Sophie. I come here as community manager for Corpus. Corpus is many things. We are working on a royalty protocol for licensing music for AI. We are also developing our own models, and we are creating also all those tools. So we're going from how can we create the structure that allows musicians to get money? How can we use this music, like this data set? What can we do with it? So we're developing our own tools, and we're also doing research to understand to which extent AI music can be controllable. What can we do with it? And my role there is to understand what we're doing and trying to communicate to the people and federate this message. So I'm also a music producer myself, so I make music, so I'm very it's even more interesting for me to be working in this industry in AI and music, because I am also myself very involved in this. And yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. So let's hand it over to Kurosh and let's show the slides you have prepared.
Yeah, we can do that in a second. Hopefully the clicker will work.
Perfect. Here we have them.
There we go. My name is Kurosh Nasseri. I'm based in New York. Much like Loredana, I'm a music lawyer by trade. I've been doing this for a minute, very passionate about music, specifically electronic music. It's what brought me to all of this. And I am the co-founder of the Association for Electronic Music, together with Ben Turner. And I'm also the current co-chair of AFEM. And you might ask yourself, what do you have to do with AI? And in the association, one of our core endeavors, and one of the reasons why we founded the association, is to collectively as an industry identify, address, and resolve breakdowns in the ecosystem. So the association is a little bit different from most other industry associations in that our members come from all different sectors within the electronic music industry. So whether it's managers, artists, festival promoters, distributors, labels, publishers, CMOs, we consciously chose an ecosystem-based approach, and the theory is that at the end of the day, all the actors in our industry, their businesses are interrelated, so if one corner suffers, there will be a knock-on effect on the other sectors. So the reason why AI is of extreme interest to the association and to me is because we feel it's a massive breakdown of the ecosystem. And this little headline here, it's an article that was published day before yesterday, and I think the headline tells you all. Tech companies, especially large tech companies, feel that they should have the right to train their models under the principle of machine learning on everything there is, including music. And the position they've taken is that if it's publicly available, they should be allowed to ingest it as training data and then do their thing for Gen AI. So we felt that it's really important to address this by outlining the principles that should apply to generative AI, because so far what we have is legislative approaches. Legislative approaches, Ralph mentioned one of them, is the AI Act in the EU. UK is no longer part of the EU, so they have the data bill, which has similar aspects but is different. And then, of course, in the US, which is one of the large markets, so far the approach has been to litigate, to use lawsuits to explore what the legal parameters should be. And so we have different systems in different regions, and because of that, we felt that it's imperative for us as an industry to identify the core principles that should govern Gen AI. So there has to be a consensus, sort of a social contract within our industry where all the actors agree, okay, these principles should apply. Because without it,
and I surely have to interrupt you, because I love the 4 principles because they explain something about the licensing concept. The topic is licensing, and the audience is interested to understand the topic of music and licensing. And I would ask you to take 2 steps back before jumping right into the principles to explain how Gen AI is transforming every corner of the industry and why is the topic so complex. And then you can maybe lead to the 4 core principles, but just taking 2 steps back and explain to the audience the concept of music licensing, because I assume not everybody is a music lawyer in here, and we are the experts, and we are also here to have an educational conversation for the audience. So maybe you take 2 steps back and explain the complexity about music licensing and where the gaps are before you jump to the solution.
Okay. Music licensing. So for me, the best analogy is sampling, right? If you, let's say you're in a studio environment and one of the creatives has the idea of using the bass line from whichever track and working with that as an element in creating a new work. If you want to do that, you need to obtain a license. You need to get the permission of the authors of the original work to use the bass line as part of this new composition. You end up striking a deal where you agree on a split of the publishing rights. If you're using the original recording, you do the same on the sound recording side, where typically the solution is you get X% of the royalties from the commercial exploitation of this new recording. So that's really the licensing framework for sampling.
And now, for AI, what is the challenge? Who needs to give the consent for an AI training license? Is it the publisher? Is it the label? Is it even the performer? Who needs to consent if, I mean, you also said that there's a huge topic of theft around it, but in an ideal world where we have a license for AI training, who has to give the consent?
I was using the sampling as an example, and really as an analogy, because with Gen AI, what you have is you have computer systems ingesting vast amounts of music as training data. And then the model that is developed by the developers allows you to prompt the machine that has learned based on the ingestion of existing music to say, I want to have this type of bass line, maybe with reference to the original song, in the style of, let's say, Mozart. And then the generative AI model will spit out a result that may incorporate the bass line with different instruments or perhaps in a different key and adapt it to in the style of part of the prompt. So in essence, Gen AI is sampling on an enormous scale, because you may have a situation where you have not just one sample as part of the Gen AI product, but you may have a multitude, 3, 5,
Let
10.
me challenge that, because sampling means reproduction of rights. So you use the original recording in a new version, in a new creation of music. With the large language model, you could also say it's an inspiration where the originality and reproduction right is not being used in the output. So let's hand it over to Loredana, who is a music lawyer as well. And I was wondering, how do you see the analogy to sampling in training and creating an output based on existing copyrighted music?
It's a difficult one, because I do agree that it's in providing an example of how to explain that the output is, no matter what, influence. I mean, we need to dissect the influencing rights, and we do need to have some sort of more technical understanding of how the model works, also because not every model works in the same way.
Absolutely.
So that's also something that we need to consider. And I think that the sampling example is a valid one in terms of getting an easy way to grasp how we are using some content to come up with something else. The example that I use is a bit more unorthodox in terms that I just think of a milkshake. I have a banana, I have an apple, I have a strawberry and some milk. I put them all together in a bullet, whatever, and then I get the milkshake. And the milkshake is technically something entirely different from the banana, the apple, and the strawberry. It's got a different flavor. It might have more flavor of something or less flavor of something else, depending on how much I've been using of those elements, but it is kind of undeniable that each one of these fruits made the milkshake. And that's, I think, is something that I like to kind of refer, because it is a good image that you can give to people as to how reshuffling things can still give you something that can be entirely different. And you can do the same analogy even with colors. Take the color yellow and the color blue. You mix them together, you get green. Would we argue that yellow and blue had nothing to do with coming up with green? Nobody would do that. But yet, it's something entirely different. If you see green and you didn't pass the stage at elementary school where they explained you the primary colors, you wouldn't come up with the idea. It's possible, but you wouldn't come up with that idea. You wouldn't figure out ever that the green comes up from that. And this is, I think, what is kind of a bit of an explanation. And going back to the milkshake, to me, is also kind of interesting, because standing the fact that I don't cook, yes, I'm Italian, but I don't, I think it's quite interesting to see that maybe then I can use that milkshake to do, maybe I stuck it in the fridge and somehow it comes up some sort of a cheesecake. That, to me, is synthetic data. It's when I'm using the output to create, again, something else. All of these stages require some sort of attribution and understanding of who do we pay and do we have to pay. Whoever is creating a milkshake, I sincerely doubt that anybody's going to come here and tell me, you don't need to pay for the banana, because the banana is there and I want to do a milkshake. As much as that is kind of the core principle at the beginning, I would expect that that should apply also in the system of AI. And maybe sometimes going back to physical, tangible things allow us to grasp this concept a bit better. Mm-hmm. I hope, at least.
Great. Thank you. Maybe to remain at this educational level for now, maybe to Sophie, how do you, with Corpus, go out to the community and explain the technological and legal complexities about AI in order to educate the creative community?
Yeah, it's very complicated because, as you said, like, we need to use many analogy and we need to explain a little bit, especially for musicians, right? Because at the moment, the discourse is split between big tech company and majors and lawsuit and everything. But most of the musicians are not part of the majors. They're like doing music and nobody really, they don't really have a voice because it's so fragmented. You have lots of indies musicians. They don't have the technical knowledge, they don't have the law background, they don't really know what that means to license their music or what AI is going to do. So what we do at Corpus, like, we build the infrastructure to make it as simple as it could be and explain how the music was going to be used. So you're a musician, you want to make money because it's another revenue stream. It is, as you said, we have to pay for the banana, and all of the artists that contributed to music are the reason why AI models exist in the first place, because AI is nothing else than what it's been trained on. And when tech companies are like, yeah, it is fair use, we can use it and not give money to artists, it's the same thing all the time. It's like we're gonna take all of the cake, and then in the end, everyone who actually made this cake happen have nothing. So what we say to convince artists, because it's not easy either, because music is very emotional. So it's hard to come and say, yeah, the EP you spent 3 hours making, it kind of worth nothing, because with the AI thing, it's just a drop in the water. But you still can earn something from it by contributing. So it's putting the content back. So it's saying, as an artist, all right, this is happening, but you have a chance to actually get something. If you consent to it, your music can be used, and then you can choose for what it's going to be used. As you said, you have like different models, so the generative model is different than temporal recognition, like it can be different things. So that's how we go about it, by building an easy infrastructure. So you go ahead, you have an easy UX design, etc., and by also saying what's going to happen and what they can get from their contribution, how it's going to be split. Yeah.
Thank you, Sophie. And Ralph was laughing about, I don't know about what.
It's
but
becoming
please.
a food panel.
Yeah.
No, because we had the same situation inside the company in one of my colleagues.
Yeah.
So we are not native English speaker, and we had another colleague, and she complained about us explaining things with spaghetti and bolognese. So it's because we have a bit of... That's because we had to laugh about it. So we are aware of these explaining food things. Can we go one slide back again, please?
Yeah, of course, to the principles.
Yes, please.
I think now we set the stage more about what applies to the concept of licensing music to AI. So let's go back to the principles, because they explain on another level how we can ideally build the infrastructure.
I think our colleague in the back needs to activate it because the clicker no longer works.
Yeah, I mean, there was one part. I wake up in the morning and I need to earn money. I need to pay bills. We have staff, we have rent, we have travel costs, and sometimes we try to make holidays, which doesn't work at all. So we have a client, and we need something from the client. The client owns music. The client is a label, manager, artist, publisher, both. And in the AI world, I need to be safe before I sell the client's music to the AI world. And that means the moral rights is something we need to clear nowadays, which is complicated because we never did it before. We know about it. We are part of the AI principles. We have to go one level more deep now. And nobody in the industry likes to talk about that, but you have to make a deal with the Gen AI world because they took the music anyway in most of the cases. That's the biggest thievery in the current century. I mean, that's totally okay. There's technology, they steal music, they don't know about it, they don't want to know about it. Fair enough, I would probably also do the same, but now we need to go towards their direction and tell them, this is something which is illegal, please license. The moral rights you don't have, we sometimes have them. We are trying to get them more and more, and we need to make our homeworks. And in about 1 or 2 years, we have a legal ecosystem, which is great for everybody. That's how I would sum it up at the moment. So moral rights is the beginning.
Just one, again, listening to you, so you mean in licensing from the source, which is the creator, the artist.
Yes.
So you mean we need to widen the agreements and include moral rights in order for you as a distributor or as a licensor of rights, you need another package of rights in order to be able to license
Definitely.
to a Gen AI company.
More granular, more precise, not this industry like, may make a deal and we ask 25 people and the other 30, we don't care, just take them inside the deal. That's how the industry works because you don't have time and capacity to deal every piece, but now we need to go exactly to the detail, and big companies will hate me for this now because they own 25 million copyright tracks, master rights, but there are no moral rights inside. So theoretically,
sometimes they are.
Sometimes they are. Yeah. You're on the legal side. You know the details, but it's not complete. And I would say 80-90% of the ownership goes back to the creator now, and we need to get it back from the creator. So the power is with the people at the moment, which is good or bad depending on which side you are. And I need to get the trust from the creator who has the moral rights so that I tell the creator, I'll sell your music and I generate revenue. And while I do this, I need to explain how this works on the Gen AI side. What is attribution? Do they pay for training data plus output, which is quite an important message. The Gen AI platform has to pay for training data, sure shot, in case of the output is no success. And I think a lot of people here know about training data and output because it's so much AI experienced people. So that's normally I would say we should explain this, but safe and a bit adventurous, and that's where we are. And on
What
the
do you mean with that? Safe and a bit adventurous is where we are. That's very generic.
Yeah.
It's a very generic statement. And I'm just wondering what are your
you're
thoughts
right.
behind that?
Safe is training data licensing, so a bit revenue for the training data, not a high advance in the old industry, okay advance, and remuneration on the output is the adventurous thing, because I don't know if my music generates more revenue on the output compared to you, because that is the part of the attribution experience model. In about 1 year, you know that your song from the 70s generates much, much more revenue on the output, and my 3 million track catalog is not worth anything. That's something we have to see. And on the way, the creators should work and trust us. And we need to exchange knowledge. And I think that's where we are at the moment, yeah.
Kurosh wants to make a statement to that.
No, I didn't want to make a statement. I wanted to actually add an explanatory note. So one of the principles that old contracts don't apply. Why? What is meant by that? If you follow the news, you keep seeing announcements that major labels are entering into joint ventures with Gen AI companies. What does that mean? There's never an explanation to go with the headline. What it presumably means is, and you know, they say what's past is prologue, so we've gone through this cycle with streaming. What it probably means is that there's a deal under which the major makes its catalog available to the AI company with two elements to the commercial terms. One, there's a license fee for the use of the catalog as training data. And two, there's equity participation in order to take care of what happens on the output side. Now, sounds good, except what will typically happen, again, using our the experience from streaming as you know, sort of the premise, because the structure is quite similar. The artists whose work comprises the catalog that they've just done a deal with probably will see an entry on the royalty statement that reflects the license fee that's payable for use of the catalog. What they will not see is any reference to the profit that comes on the equity side. So that makes it a very attractive deal for the major, because you don't have to share that element of the deal. And at the same time, you start to have a very powerful position in the market. And if we look at you know, what happened with streaming, Spotify is the dominant player when it comes to streaming globally, and some of the equity is owned by the majors. Why? Because they were able to use the significance of their catalog in order to force Spotify to have to give up equity if they wanted to use the catalog for streaming. So when we say old contracts don't apply, the use of music for Gen AI purposes is not just another format. With streaming, you could argue, well, it's just a different format. It's a different consumption method for music, right? And then you look at the chain, we went from vinyl to CD to MP3 and the like as non-physical sound carriers, to streaming, which is really a different fulfillment format, but you're still accessing music as it was created as a whole. With Gen AI, that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about a different way for the consumer to access music. What we're talking about is utilizing elements of the existing music in order to create something else. That's why I thought the sampling example is the most relevant, but I love Loredana's example of the milkshake because it does have those elements. In fact, last night over dinner, this tells you how nerdy I can be, the analogy I used was Coca-Cola, because there's this big debate about tech companies not wanting to disclose their trade secrets, right? So that is sort of like the recipe for Coca-Cola, which has been a trade secret for over 100 years. And I think we have to respect that. You know, this is not intended to be a one-sided exercise. In order to come up with a realistic solution, we have to recognize and accept certain realities of business. Tech companies need to make money, otherwise it doesn't make sense for them to be in this endeavor, right? Does that mean that the tech companies should be free to help themselves to all the music that's been created and pay nothing? No, that doesn't make sense. It's not realistic, right? But on the flip side, I think we have to be realistic and say, you know what? Trade secret, we'll accept that. So we're not asking for disclosure over the recipe when it comes to the attribution issue, which is now sort of becoming a hot issue with Gen AI. But with Coca-Cola, even though the recipe is secret, there's a legal requirement that you look on the back of the bottle and it tells you what the ingredients are, much like the milkshake, right? So you're not saying, well, this milkshake is unique because the trade secret is how much apple I put in versus how much banana, right? The ingredient list is there. That doesn't disclose the trade secret. But anyway, not to go astray, old contracts don't apply, and this ties directly to moral rights. Since we're not talking about just another method of giving consumers access to listen and consume music, we're talking about altering the music that's there in order to generate a new result. The moral rights are the rights of authors, right? So, well, actually, is a good example. I see Tessa sitting in the audience. Tessie. One of our clients co-authored a track, and there was a license request from AFD to use this track for a campaign video. And our client absolutely did not want to have anything to do with that and didn't want the music that he co-created to have anything to do with that. That's moral rights.
Of course.
So I think artists have to be entitled to say, you know what, I don't want my music to be used in this Gen AI game. I think that that should be fair, and that's why it's in there as a core principle. So old contracts don't apply because artists have to have a say. The fact that we have large entities doing deals with entire catalogs without ever asking the artist whether or not they want it is worrisome.
And now let's get Loredana's view. I think we have now understood the four core principles, and we don't want to use the entire time of this panel for presenting them. Let's turn to Loredana. And what I would also like to touch on is on technological solutions and where we have to stand together as an industry in order to develop them to get to a new revenue stream. So, Loredana.
I think that the first thing that you said is like where we have to stand together.
Yes.
That's the issue, in my opinion, because we have never stand together as an industry since the list have been around, and we still won't be. So, in a way, you know, right now we know that Universal and the major are sitting down with Soon and Audio. They're finally, you know, discussing a license. Is it good? Is it bad? Twofold. It's good because it's probably going to weaken quite a lot the argument of fair use. So the fact that somehow we are sitting these infringers at the table because they kind of feel that they might need a license, this to me is good. What is the problem with what's happening right now is obviously the fact that once again, as it happened with streaming and even before that, is that we are having some companies dictating how the licenses will work. And as Kurosh correctly pointed out, there are different ways that they can structure the deals that are not necessarily going to be setting the right model for everybody to benefit. But that's not the problem of the majors, in my opinion. They are looking after their interests. And yes, morally, I will love to know that they will take in consideration what they're doing will affect everybody else. Realistically, it won't. It didn't. It probably won't. But what we need to do at this moment in time, I think that those are not the only licenses happening. I mean, I am dealing, not on a daily basis, but quite often with a lot of AI companies coming, wanting to do new initiatives, wanting to use content, looking for content desperately because they want to ethically train their models. And how we are structuring those licenses, each one of us is I like to think about it when I do my work. I like to think that I am in control of a bit of what is going to be the next phase of those contracts. And so to me, it's important to breathe in and out. I see so many people that are just launching into, we need to do the deal. We need to show that we are the first one getting our music out there. We don't even read the agreement. Let's just sign and see what's going to happen. This is not a sprint. This is a marathon. And we need to try to get it right for once. So for me, what's important is let's try to not do fluffy deals, for the love of God. Because yes, unless they're giving us an astronomical amount of money that is going to make up for whatever use is going to come after, at least personally, I think that we should try to educate those companies to understand how they need to, apportion. So what is in there? But I don't agree with the trade secret of the Coca-Cola example, to be honest, I'm sorry. And that is because, to me, it is important that they're going to attribute the value also on how much of my banana they have been using, because that is going to probably dictate the different value on the output. And they can do it, because I've seen contracts where my clients have been, structuring the pro rata, the very difficult and complex, formula that you use to attribute how much something has been used. It can be done, and so it's important that we do that. And that one side, then I'll give another side and I will let someone else speak. The other problem is that we need to simplify what we're doing. At the moment, when I work with startups, the music industry is the most complex things ever. My job should not exist. I always say that, and I'm really adamant that my job shouldn't exist. There should be an easy way for companies, any type of company, not AI company, but also video games, movies, whoever, who wants music, they should be able to access it. And right now it's impossible. It's impossible for territorial fractioning because of publishing when you have 15 different, writers on a song with 15 different publishers. That makes life harder. And whether until now we got the monopoly of music. Now we don't have the monopoly of music anymore, because whoever got access to some music, they are creating something else. So if we want to carry on being relevant, we want to kind of take advantage of this additional revenue stream. And let's be honest, we haven't had a new revenue stream for a while. I mean, the last one was fitness. And even there, we managed to screw that one up, how we license these poor people. So I think this is a real opportunity, but we need to simplify things. And companies like, to me, Surreal AI, Musical AI, Royal, it's another one coming up. I might actually be working closely soon.
Umbrella.
They're creating this kind of layer of simplification of some sort of a database where AI companies can go, access content, and easily, without having to go to 150 publisher and fight with them to try to get the rights, 150 PROs. They can just get a one-stop place to license music for AI training. And at the same time, you have some barriers, you have some control, you have some check on how your music can be used. To me, this type of structure, since we haven't been able as an industry to simplify what we're doing, it's needed not just with AI licensing, but it's needed for streaming, it's needed for movies, it's needed for advertising. We need to make access to music easier if we want to still be competitive, because we're not the only player in town anymore. And in a couple of years, everybody else can actually use synthetic data to train and other type of music, AI music, to do whatever they want to do. So as an industry, this really needs to be a wake-up call that whatever insanely complex system we created might not be working anymore.
That's, thank you. That's a great statement. And that leads me to the question, how do we get to the point that we bring everybody together in order to build simplified technological solutions so that a developer can access music to train, and that a rights holder and an artist can have access to a new revenue stream?
I would say blockchain, but we hated that, so I'm not going to mention it. I think we had it possibly a few years ago, but that was too much. Probably might have worked, that's why we didn't like it. I don't know, but maybe Ralph has got a better idea.
I know what you mean, but it's a bit too easy. That's That's a wish list scenario. You mentioned a few examples, and I'm 100% sure 99% of the content is not cleared. So if I now wear the hat of the creator, I have to say, no go. Technical solution. You have to know both rights of a track, song, or in Germany the rapper says Lied. They say Lied. The German rapper says it's my Lied. Incredible. Still can't believe that. I think of Pinocchio and Biene Meier when I think of Lied, but yeah. So you have to know both rights. You need to be able to match the data with the complete ecosystem, the relevant ecosystem. You need to include all players, CMOs, PROs, publishers, copyright control, self-published, wannabe publishers. Producers are important to be mentioned because the producers will need to be asked in about 1 or 2 years if they reserve their rights or not. And one producer, one snippet in a song or lead or track can block the complete process, fair enough. If someone reserves his or her rights, then the music will be taken out of the Jenny ideal. Untraining, retraining, catastrophic forgetting, however you want to call it. But this is technically, it will be more and more possible, but as far as I understood, it takes too much time at the moment. But things which take time at the moment will be easy in 5 years probably. But so the source needs to be clear. So this ego trip of the music industry, CMOs, PROs, publishers, labels, producers, not having the contracts in order, that doesn't work anymore. And if we go on like this, then we will be slaughtered by the JI industry with a good reason. Because we make it so complicated and we can't combine the rights. And this split of the rights is just, it doesn't make sense anymore. And now, coming back to your topic, it is too complicated. It's prepared quite complicated from us as an industry. That means the rights belong together. If not, we can't make the deal. That doesn't mean we do it always like this. We're not perfect. We also have a lot of gaps, but we need to fill the gaps. And tech-wise, it is like this. An easy DistroKit upload is not enough anymore. I don't want to talk bad about DistroKit now, but that is not a clearing for the AI world. And we know about a lot of models at the moment. I don't want to talk about this major, independent, big taking over. We can talk about it, UMG, Universal, Downtown, Virgin, Fuga inside. I mean, I'm sure a lot of AI deals are being done in the meantime. And you can't retroactively clear all these things, but tech-wise, that really means it's a bit more complex than just upload, be live on Spotify. It means more data, more knowledge, more validation processes. So the standard distribution model is, in my eyes, dead. It's okay to make money and sell the company to Universal afterwards, fine, but it's not really in the interest of the creator, to be honest. It's boring. I mean, we don't want to wake up and sell to Universal tomorrow. You know, it's a bit like... Yeah.
And the other aspect of the whole future-facing scenario, which can be a solution, is the fact that we as an industry need to find it and define it together, because we can't rely on governments and laws, which are all fragmented territorially, so there will be no solution coming from a law in wherever. And the European AI Act is fine, but it's only one act in one region of the world. And if you are working globally, like I do or you do, and Loredana does, we see that we need the industry standing together and defining this new form of license for the training and the attribution and the output. And this is needed, but it needs a technological foundation. And if we don't found it together, it won't work. Yeah. Kurosh, you want to add something?
Yes, I wanted to actually add an optimistic twist. You put it really well from an artist's perspective. What we need is a future where really the thought is, do I, as an artist or as a writer, want to participate in a new revenue stream? Yes, no. It has to be that simple, right? So, is that possible? I want to say yes. Ralph with AI Exchange is basically taking all the complicated stuff out of the equation, because what comes out of the pipe with the process that the AI Exchange is proposing is that an AI company can go and license that repertoire, knowing that all the complicated stuff has been dealt with. All the different rights holders have been contacted. There's a license in place. This is cleared rights bundle that's being offered for license. We keep saying license. That has to be a core understanding. We as an industry have to be crystal clear. There has to be a license. If not, we're talking about the alternative being that just because you use a machine rather than a human being, your entire rights environment is different. If you're a human being producing music, you need to go and obtain a license if you want to engage in sampling. If you're a machine, you can have at it, ingest whatever you want, go ahead and use it, and there's no license required. That does not make sense. So this core understanding that the industry needs to settle on saying this is the way this works, identifying the process, that is absolutely necessary. The rest is very doable. So I completely disagree with our dear president who got on a soapbox and say, it's impossible. Why is it impossible? It can't be done. This is literally the words that were used. So I respectfully disagree. It can be done. Is it complex? Yes. Is it a pain in the rear? Yes. Is it inconvenient? Yes. But it's doable.
Definitely. And what I also would like to differentiate is we are talking very generalistically about all the catalogs in the world being used to train these big models, Suno and Udio, for example. But there are so many opportunities for generative AI where I could use, if I could play an instrument, I can't, use my own creations to train my own model and do something with it. So it really eases the process of creation of music. It creates something new. There is a bright future ahead of us if we go through all the hurdles we need to solve. But there is a new future of the creation of music, and this will be something which we don't know how it looks now, but I'm very positive about the development of new technologies.
Lots of new ecosystem,
yes.
Jobs, taxes,
Absolutely.
Berlin will become relevant again.
Yes. Why not? Why not? And
I'm registered in Berlin, don't get me wrong. I live here.
Me too. So I would like to now wrap it up with a statement. What needs to be, or with a question to the panelists, what needs to be ensured, the one thing you think is necessary to do this right and to build this bright future we all have in our minds? So maybe let's begin with Ralph. Just to wrap it up, and then we can turn to the audience and for questions.
We must translate our old music rights management industry towards the new Gen AI industry, because they are not so great as we think. And we must be able within the next 1 or 2 years to transform our old industry into the new industry. If not, we are lost, completely lost. But it's just a do we get it done or not situation, and we must do that now, today, and not tomorrow. And I'm happy to be in Europe, because European copyright is a great base for everything. AI Act is great. We call it the Steilvorlage. So I see a great future on the AI side of things.
Pace is your one thing we have to take care of. Loredana.
We just don't need German Angst. That's what we don't need at the moment. Definitely not. It's quite annoying.
So pace is the one thing we need. And Loredana?
Building on this, obviously, but then moving on to, well, attribution. I think that we really, really need to find ways to ensure that the metadata is going to be right, but also that the audio itself somehow is kind of identifiable along the chain so that we can monetize it.
Mm-hmm. Great. Attribution, pace attribution, and Sophie?
I'd say to not forget the creativity of it all, because we are talking very much about the legal aspects and how we make it work, but to not forget why we make this in the first place, what we can use AI for, because we only talk about Gen AI and how they can make other songs, but there is so many more applications to this. Like Gen AI is kind of boring. You have so much in automotive industry, in gaming, in virtual reality. Like AI can really change the way we use music, and also to be hopeful and to maybe rethink how we see copyright, because at the beginning it was to protect ourselves. It's like we need to find, not just say that we need to find a new way of making people collaborate, but create the tools that makes it work, and not just the principles, but in practice, what does this look like and how do we do? So to make this available for people to actually put in practice those principles.
Great, thank you. Pace, attribution, creativity. Kurosh.
Consensus. We need our industry to reach consensus. We had a slide up with the AFEM AI principles. It was an attempt to boil this down to the simplest possible basis for a consensus. You would be shocked at how difficult it is to get the large actors in our industry to agree to support the principles, even if they've already said the same thing themselves in different words. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to leave it at that. I think the most urgent need is for us to have a consensus of what is okay and what is not.
Thank you. So pace, attribution, creativity, and consensus. That's what's needed to build a great future for the AI licensing market, to create new revenue streams for the creators and artists out there, and the rights holders, of course. Thank you so much. I just got the note that we have to end the session on time, so there is no time for questions with the audience. Maybe one, I don't know. Where's Yolanda, our MC?
Does anyone have a question? Who's the first who has a question? There's one question in the room, and then we'll take the rest of the questions over lunch.
Okay.
Hi, hello. I have a question to Ralph. So how many companies are actually interested in licensing?
At the moment, or the preview?
Yeah, at the moment, with from your experience.
5 to 10. The preview of the next half year, 20, 30, 40, 50, roundabout. But Gen AI and science industry is a bit different. I also believe strongly into the science industry, like university who train on models or try something out and become at a later stage a commercial model. But generally, compared to DSPs like Spotify, Apple, Beatport, Tencent, I think it's 3, 4, 5 times higher than compared to when we started to sign DSPs. Like Spotify wasn't really active in the days, but iTunes or Music Load in the beginning, or Beatport, 3, 4, 5 times higher. Because this multiplicator, this model A equals B, is something which is just another level nowadays. But it's not that many, but it's getting more and more. And you also have to consider that when we license, we want to be remunerated. That's what the creator expects from us on the training data side and on the output or subscription, however output revenue looks like. And that makes it complicated, because the Gen AI platform thinks they can live with epidemic music, production music, but then they recognize copycat music is not really creativity, which is not good for the machine. So that's where we are at the moment. I think as soon as they realize unique human-created content is better for the machine, it will be probably, a few hundred. Yeah. But at the moment it's limited, but much, much higher compared to the download and streaming industry in the beginning. So that's because I'm quite positive. When people say, just a few, then I say, that's It's much, much more than in the year 2003 and 4 when we signed with iTunes Music in Cupertino. Nobody knew where Cupertino was in these days. Yeah. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much.